The Forest That Keeps the Bodies Hollow. Atlas, Episode 09. Narration script, The Archivist. Cold open 7 in the morning. Spring, 1989. Azusa Hayano, forest ranger for the Fujikawa Guchiko area, entered Aokigahara for his first official patrol. He had been briefed on the forest. He knew its geography, its geological history, its access points. He had the standard equipment: radio, map, first aid. What he was not prepared for was the silence. Not quiet, not peaceful. Silence, the kind that is absent of the things that should be present. No birds audible, no insect sounds, no wind movement in the upper branches, though the air outside the tree line was moving. He stood inside the forest at 7 in the morning with 35 square kilometers of trees around him, and the ambient noise reading was, by every measure he had, wrong. He turned back, completed his administrative notes, and returned the following morning. He has been returning ever since. More than 30 years. Here is what makes Aokigahara different from every other forest in Japan, and the question this episode will attempt to answer. Why does the silence occur? What does the geological survey say about the compass anomaly? And what is the actual history of this place before the 20th century gave it its modern identity? Because the answer to all three of those questions is in the ground. It has been in the ground since 864 CE, when the lava stopped moving. Act 1. The ground under the trees. Aokigahara was not always a forest. In the year 864 CE, Mount Fuji erupted. The specific eruption is documented in the historical record. It is known as the Yogan eruption, named for the era of the Japanese imperial calendar in which it occurred. The lava flow from that eruption covered approximately 35 square kilometers of the Aokigahara Basin on Fuji's northwest flank. Lava flows cool into basalt. Basalt is porous but dense, and in this case it retained a high iron content from the specific mineral composition of the Fuji volcanic material. The surface, over the following centuries, accumulated organic matter, leaves, bark, decomposing material, and eventually soil enough to support tree growth. But the trees grow from basalt. Their root systems navigate around and through rock. The surface is uneven, riddled with fissures, cavities, and lava tubes that run beneath the forest floor at varying depths. Some of these subsurface spaces are large enough to enter. Many are not marked or mapped. Two measurable phenomena emerge from this geology directly. First, compass anomaly. The iron content of the basalt creates a localized magnetic interference. A standard compass in Aokigahara will read up to 5 to 10 degrees off true north, varying by location within the forest. This is not mythology. It is documented in a Japanese geological survey study from the 1970s. The iron in the rock deflects the needle. The degree of deflection depends on where you are standing. Before GPS, before reliable trail markers, a person who entered the forest relying on a compass would find that their instrument was lying. Not dramatically. 5 to 10 degrees is not a large variance on a straight road. In a 35 square kilometer forest with no clear sight lines, on terrain that is broken and uneven, 5 degrees off is enough to walk in a different direction than you intended. Second, the silence. This is also documented not anecdotally, but in acoustic measurements conducted by Japanese researchers. The porous basalt surface absorbs sound differently from soil or rock. Ambient noise readings inside Aokigahara are measurably lower than ambient noise in equivalent forests on different substrates. The trees also create a density of canopy that reduces sound penetration from above. The result is that inside the forest, at ground level, the soundscape is anomalously quiet for a temperate environment with a functioning ecosystem. The birds are there, the insects are there. The sound simply does not carry the way it does elsewhere. This is the forest that Azusa Hayano entered in 1989 and found wrong. Pattern interrupt. This is not a story about suicide. This needs to be stated plainly. The association between Aokigahara and suicide deaths is real, documented, and serious. The Japanese government stopped publishing annual body count statistics in 2011 because the publication of those numbers was, in the assessment of mental health professionals, contributing to the problem it was documenting. The last published figure, for 2010, was 57. The actual numbers since 2011 are not officially released. Azusa Hayano's 30 years of work in the forest is not primarily about finding bodies. It is about the forest as a geological and ecological entity. He has published academic work on Aokigahara's botany, its hydrology, its soil composition, its wildlife. He is a forest scientist who works in a specific, unusual forest. The signs posted at the entrances to Aokigahara, in Japanese, maintained since the 1990s, say, "Please consult. Life is precious. Think of your family." They were put there by the volunteer patrol organizations, funded by the Yamanashi Prefecture, that have been operating in the forest since 1970. 1970. The volunteer patrols began 55 years ago, before the Western media discovered the story, before the books and films that brought international attention. Japanese volunteers have been walking this forest, looking for people in crisis, maintaining markers, documenting what they find for over half a century. The patrols are not dramatic. They are routine. They are the kind of unglamorous, sustained human effort that does not photograph well but represents the actual relationship that the surrounding community has with this forest. People who live near Aokigahara have been trying to help for 50 years. That is the human story of this place. Act 2. The longer history. Aokigahara's association with death predates the 20th century by a very long margin. Buddhist temple records from the Yamanashi region reference the forest in supernatural terms as early as the 12th century, approximately 300 years after the lava flow that created it. The specific supernatural category referenced is yurai, the spirits of the dead who remain attached to a place or circumstance. The records describe Aokigahara as a place where these entities were believed to concentrate. This is not a folk belief that emerged naturally from the landscape. It was shaped by a practice, documented in historical sources, though contested in its scale and regularity, called ubasut. In periods of severe famine, in the Edo period and earlier, families in extremity sometimes brought elderly relatives to remote locations and left them. The mountains were the most common destination. Yamanashi Prefecture, and specifically the areas around Fuji, appear in Edo period accounts of this practice. The extent to which this actually happened in Aokigahara specifically, versus the surrounding mountain region generally, is not established. What is established is that the association was present in temple records, in regional folklore, in the oral tradition, before industrialization, before the modern road network, before tourism. The modern literary association begins in 1960. Seicho Matsumoto, one of the most significant Japanese crime writers of the 20th century, published a novel called Kuroi Jukai, translated as Black Sea of Trees. The novel's climax involves a double suicide in Aokigahara. The book was enormously popular. It was the kind of popular that changes a place's cultural meaning permanently. In 1993, a practical manual was published in Japan that addressed suicide methods directly. It specifically referenced Aokigahara as a recommended location. The book was purchased widely. It reached a mainstream readership before its implications were understood. The connection between the book and subsequent events in the forest has been noted by Japanese researchers, though establishing direct causation from a single publication is methodologically complicated. The Japanese government's response, stopping the publication of death statistics, funding volunteer patrols, installing signage, was considered an incremental rather than reactive. Act 3. What the forest holds. The trees in Aokigahara grow from basalt. The root systems, confronted with rock rather than soil, grow laterally and then downward through fissures rather than vertically. The result is a forest where the trees appear to grip the ground. The roots are visible at the surface, wrapped around stone, creating a texture that is unlike forest floors in other environments. From above, the canopy is dense and continuous. From within, the sight lines are short. The trees are not especially tall. The basalt substructure limits their height, but they are close set and the understory is thick. Within 20 meters of a trail, the trail becomes auditorially invisible. The sound absorption means you cannot hear the path you are standing on. The lava tubes beneath the surface are a factor that is rarely discussed in popular accounts of the forest. Aokigahara has an extensive network of subsurface cavities, cavities created when the outer surface of a lava flow cooled and hardened while molten rock continued to flow beneath and then drained out, leaving hollow tubes. Some of these are large, some are mapped, many are not. The ice cave at the northern edge of the forest is a tourist attraction, a lava tube large enough to walk through, which maintains below freezing temperatures year-round because of the insulating properties of the surrounding basalt. In summer, ice forms on the cave walls. The cave is beautiful, well lit for visitors, perfectly safe. It is the same geological structure as the unmapped cavities elsewhere in the forest. Azusa Hayano has spent 30 years in this forest. He has described it in interviews as very old and very quiet. He has said, in a Japanese television documentary from 2012, that the forest itself has no malevolence. It is a geological entity, 800 years old in the specific sense, which is simply very quiet because of what it is made of. He also said, in the same interview, the people who go into this forest and don't come out are carrying something with them. The forest doesn't give that to them. They bring it. The volunteer patrols continue. They go in on weekends, in groups with markers and maps and mobile phones and the phone numbers of crisis lines written on cards they carry. They find people. They walk them out. They do this in a forest where the compass is unreliable and the ambient noise is measurably wrong. That is the human relationship with Aokigahara, not the one that gets photographed. Close 864 CE. Lava solidified. Trees grew. The iron content of the basalt deflects compasses. The porous surface absorbs sound. The forest is 35 square kilometers of volcanic rock under thin soil, and it has been there in approximately its current form for 160 years. The trees took time to establish themselves after the eruption. The Yurei associations in the temple records are older than the modern road to the forest. The Ubasuta accounts are from the Edo period. The volunteer patrols have been running since 1970. The signs have been there since the 90s. Azusa Hayano has been walking the forest for more than 30 years. He says the compass fails because of the iron. He says the silence is because of the basalt. He says the forest is very old and very quiet. None of that is supernatural. All of it is real.